crisp and lovely morning, Waikato morning. So today, Economic Development Committee meeting of the 28th of June. We have a number of apologies. Councillor Muku on council business, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Hutt are for full day absence. Partial attendance by Mayor Paula, Councillor Joe, and from 3 p.m, Councillor Maxine. I'm hoping that we won't be going by that time. And on Zoom, I know I've got Councillor Joe, I've got Councillor Maxine, and so we have quorum. I'll move the apologies, seconded by Councillor Mark. All those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Moving along, we've got the confirmation of the agenda. The agenda is as in diligence and on the running sheet. I'll move, seconded by Councillor Donovan. All those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. No need for declarations of interest. Public forum, we have none. Right, confirmation of the Economic Development Committee open minutes of the 11th of May for accuracy. Are there any issues concerning accuracy? If not, moved by Councillor Mark, seconded by Councillor Emma. All those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Chair's report. Moved by Councillor Mark, seconded by Councillor Andrew. I have no comment. The report is as read. Any questions? If not, it is moved. All those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Let this be... It's got to slow up now. Let me introduce to you our General Manager, Blair. Blair, I'm in your hands.
Well, I was hoping there was going to be a chat on the Chair's report. That's a great report, Mr. Chair. But, thank you and good morning, members. Today, really just covering two matters. First of all, the first version of our report to give you a visual understanding of progress against the key outcomes and targets that the committee had set. And you may recall both in the March meeting and the May meeting, we presented a summary of the economic development principles, our approach, some of the key focus areas, and then really the targeted outcomes that we had intended. And you might recall that at the March meeting you added hospitality, so that was reported back in May. This attachment here today is a visual representation of progress, both in terms of the tasks in year one, but also recognising that our focus over 3 years. So very, very open and welcome your feedback. This is a first cut and open for suggestions. Also happy to take questions on the items within there, noting some of those are also covered in the agenda. I've also just reported back on a question that was raised at one of the earlier meetings in relation to how we can communicate some of the sustainable outcomes that we are supporting, seeing or working with businesses or businesses are undertaking in relation to economic development activities. So in paragraph 15 I give a range of examples, and there are reports later in the agenda which also speaks to some of these items. So through that, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Excellent. Can I open it up for questions, colleagues? Councillor Sarah.
Yes, thank you.
And Councillor Stevie.
Stirring. Blair, I was just interested in the commentary around sustainability, and had a question which was a broad question around the way that we're gathering data and measuring success in terms of Hamilton's economy. To what extent are we looking at like the quality of growth and, for example, productivity gains? Because you can have growth through just increasing the population or just by making more stuff, but it doesn't mean we're more productive or that actually it's benefiting, people, I guess, more. It could be very consolidated benefits concentrated benefits rather than more general to the community, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I might invite my learned friend Mike to just come forward or, come here, just to respond to it, because it speaks to some of the things that we cover later in the agenda. So maybe just cover it generally, Mike, and then we'll pick it up. Just a red button. Yeah. No, you're on.
Councillor Surrey, I think it's a really interesting question. I think there's always that economic development. The development bit means enhancement, I guess, taking things to a better place rather than just growth, which means just more. So while it's not the stated purpose of our function, and then there are others throughout council far more targeted and better placed on the specifics around sustainability. I think for us, it's really embedded in the work we do, and our engagement begins with the employers and helping them where they need it to achieve some of their goals. I think by and large of the 30 to 40 meetings we've had, and it's summarized in some of the reports, that quality growth, I think, is a part, it's part of what they're thinking, it's part of what they're doing, some more than others. How we measure that, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think, many organizations have that ESG strategy and governance. Our goal really is to engage with those companies where they do have pathways around this sort of work, is to support them, encourage them, connect them with others doing the same thing. We do have a sustainability summary that we put out about the work that's going on with companies. I believe it might be going out as a press release sometime next week, but it is attached to this report as well.
So I guess finding other ways to measure things could be something we think about in the future, but I imagine it's a hard thing too. I think in our place it's not, we're probably not the best to understand and do that, but for sure within council, and I think with the reorg, it'll become more part of what we do in economic development around how do we bring that more into light, target, track where people say they're reaching for sustainability goals. How do we continue to measure and communicate that? I think it's quite a new space for us, to be honest.
I wonder also whether it relates to the type of industry or employment we want to attract and grow versus those that we don't.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of speaks to some of the sectors that Mike's team are focusing on, and those that we consider align better with our opportunities, but also the type of city we want to see in the future. But I think it's a good question, Councillor, and it's something that we'll reflect on in terms of, it speaks to GDP, it speaks to the contribution of sectors and the growth though, so we'll reflect on that.
And that productivity question as well, I think, is important because, it's, I think something New Zealand's grappled with, and there's lots of, things that feed into, I guess, the lower productivity that sometimes we see, but it would be interesting to...
Yeah, there are some very smart people named Tiki Mossop and Greg Karstens and others that this is stuff that they live to do and have a really good frame of knowledge around. Same thing around the conversation around affordability, I know that was had last time. So we will continue to look to see how we pull that into the economic development world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sarah. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Anna Casey-Cox.
Yeah, just following on a little bit from that. In terms of, I guess I have got some specific questions around what you've reported on around sustainability. Shall I leave some of those specifics till later?
Yeah, probably to the ED program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I think the key, councillors, is that it was a great question that was raised at the meeting, and it's certainly something that we want to think about more in terms of how we include climate sustainability into the work program of this committee in terms of visibility and I think our thinking and reporting. So happy to continue that focus. Excellent. It's an emerging topic for us all.
All right, colleagues, I've got a couple of questions, but after Councillor Mark.
Thanks, Chair Ewan. Just on that, and I might be a bit premature, but when we're thinking sustainability and contribution to growth and all that sort of thing, are we still considering what compliance costs are on businesses as well? because I know that that is something that they will have to factor in, and that obviously then flows through to the bottom line.
Simple answer, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality here is...
I may have gone fishing for a yes.
And these are some of the topics that both this committee and I guess Strategic Growth District Plan also have to balance, councillor. It is how quickly can we transition and realise some of those future aspirations and do it in a way that balances all our various considerations.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Blair.
Thank you. My question, I think, maybe Michael Blair. In terms of the attachment 1 under item 7 on diligent page 22, first of all, thank you for putting it in such an easy to understand demonstration of where we're at. But how do you determine whether or not we're at 25% or less versus the orange?
It's a good question, councillor, and a lot of it is really judgment of the manager or the senior staff member involved in the piece of work. It's their assessment of how they are feeling they are tracking in terms of the particular initiative. And as I say, this is a work in progress.
Right.
But it is certainly based on if there are milestones or if there are definitive elements within the project, then that will influence that. But it is also the judgment of the person responsible to say, this is where we feel it's at.
Right, thank you. In light of the current analysis on page 25, where we have the new hotel under construction in 3 years is an orange at 30%, and tourism generation of visitor nights in order to strengthen the business case for commercial accommodation development is at 25%. Is there not an inconsistency there? Doesn't one follow the other?
They are very much linked, yes, and we recognise the extreme criticality of additional accommodation in the city, and we recognise that in the absence of that the items that are marked red are severely compromised or in terms of the ability to provide that peak accommodation need. So yes, councillor, the item that's marked 30% or orange could equally be considered red. The reason why that is shown as 30% orange is that there are active discussions, but they are only at that stage. So you could say, on one hand, we are working on this initiative proactively, but we're only at that point in the milestone. You could equally say, whilst we have failed to confirm and have a hotel, that should be red as well. So you could look at it both ways. And I guess there's an element of judgment in this, and this is why it's a bit of a work in progress, and the conversation I think is equally important.
Could you expand on what you see the current obstacles and barriers are to securing a 4-star or above? And I'm using 4-star in the sense of qual-marked certification. What are the barriers? Where are we struggling?
It is primarily in the funding and ownership of the hotel itself. So the case for a hotel, the demand is very, very strong. A completed building that and the ownership model and funding, we understand would be the uptake would be very significant. In other words, the use of it, and equally, we believe that there'll be a number of operators who'd be very keen to run the hotel. But it is Hamilton competing with other tier 1 hotel destinations for the limited capital to build and own a building for a hotel is the challenge. And so by that I mean there are other Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Queenstown, for example, are seen as the first priority locations for that. Hamilton ranks behind that.
You'll note that one of our current number one priority of both the Mayor and myself is attracting a new hotel. I'm also mindful of the fact that the MEF has expressed a desire or willingness to participate with some equity and potentially with some land. Will that help enable a player to come along, or are we best to go out again with expressions of interest to try to get some more proactive response?
Those are all very real and relevant questions and considerations, and we are working with some of the preeminent advisors in the industry right now to test those very matters. But suffice to say that we are considering all our pathways to respond to that priority of the council.
Are you aware of any developers who have contemplated a hotel development but have been scared off for whatever reason?
I think there's certainly competition in the Hamilton market, and so any new player is considering the extent of that competition, and that may influence or have a bearing on some of their decision making. But we nonetheless have very comprehensive reports which we have shared with a number of parties that we believe underpin a strong economic case for a hotel.
So in regards to competition, are you suggesting by that potential competitors would try to proactively to convince other developers not to pursue hotels because it may affect their investments?
I'm aware that there is some conversation around that, but I haven't seen that firsthand, but that could well be some of the market behaviour.
Thank you. On the same report, I note with interest, my favourite subject other than hotels is airport, and I see that there is a reference to focus on long-term role as part of the aviation industry and regional economy, and our progress to that is 50%, and it refers to, in the comments, a document called the Statement of Intent. When was the last time that we renewed the Statement of Intent?
Look, I'm going from memory here because the general manager who looks after the airport is not here today, but it would have been within the last 12 months, and that's a document the airport company would provide to the shareholders for the shareholders to comment on.
And is it correct that the last Statement of Intent that we were asked to comment on had no indication that the airport intended to not renew the resource consent to extend the runway?
I can't specifically reference what that document said, but that I think is my understanding.
Do you believe it would be normal practice that having had a letter of intent between a key shareholder and the company, that they would want to let us know in advance of any significant change of direction prior to that decision having been made?
There are matters which the company constitution and the board of directors are able to make decisions on, and they relate to significance, they relate to a range of factors. So again, I don't have the specifics there, councillor, but that is quite normal that the company and board and chief executive are empowered to make decisions on a range of things.
So in light of that, does the statement of intent have any value,
Yes, it does.
despite the fact that the airport, in your words, can make decisions of significance without engagement?
I think it goes to the definition of the Constitution, it goes to the definition of significance, and so it's a balance between enabling the board and the management team to get on with the business, but it also identifies matters that require shareholder discussion engagement, and so I don't have the detail of those in front of me, but that is quite normal practice.
Thank you. Final question on that. So are you saying that the current constitution between the shareholders and the airport, as you know it currently, is fit for purpose?
I'm not providing any commentary on that. I don't have that in front of me, so.
All right. Thank you. My last question is regarding shaping narratives in the report that you've provided, and it says 25%, so it's in red, scoping digital content. Now, this issue of digital content and our website has been on the Economic Development Committee's table for nearly 4 years, and we're still at 25%. Why are we only at 25%? And secondly, what do we intend to do about it?
So I think I'll get Mike to respond to that, but just what I would say is that we probably shouldn't judge what the quality of our information, our website and the digital information based on this one particular metric. There is a range of information that has been promulgated there in recent months, and there's quite an extensive database of information. So this is referring to one particular initiative, but there is a vast array of very valuable information now on our ED website. But Mike?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think for us, really, we came into it thinking that would be the first port of call, the first thing we would do. And what we've come to learn, and part of that was with the overall council redo of the website, is that actually we didn't have some of the things contained in this report, what we've been providing over the last year, that didn't exist. Now we have the content to go out and push and tell the story from that particular way. So a big part in working with Aaron and other people in the comms team is taking all of this content that's taken quite a bit of effort to create, and then now having it put up on a website that has a bit more of a built for purpose structure to it. I also think that we've been able to get really good cut through. I mean, the whole goal is to get the message out, and we've been really successful, again, with the cooperation of Aaron and others, to get that message out in a really proactive and productive way. So while the physical website isn't quite where we want it to be, and it's part of our second half of the year goals, together with the team that we now have, the end result of that, I don't feel is being compromised. I think we're being pretty successful in how we get the messaging out.
Cool, thank you. I'm pleased to see that we've now got more questions. So I've got Councillor Maxine online.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Your
sorry,
last question was also mine, keeping in mind that our website has had a redesign. And in fact, that's the way business and individuals who are looking to come into a city will look online for information about that city. And so pretty sure that's been answered, and look forward to some further development of that portal once it's completed. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Maxine. I know the sorry, I was about to say the Deputy Mayor. See, when you go overseas, you come back, your role may have changed, but no, yes, you are the Mayor.
Job, but
She did a very good job while you were away.
thank you. Well, yes, and I acknowledge that. It was being very great. Thank you, Angela. Just in terms of the hotel, going back to that, because, you know, it is one of my key strategies. You all know this. I've been saying, show me the hotel. I sat to Ewan and Ryan and Eno listen on a weekly basis. It does seem to me you did mention something about competitiveness as opposed to opposition or interference, for want of a better word. What is the one thing that's going to really make this happen? Because at the moment I'm a bit frustrated. Because people talk about it, they come in with expressions of interest, you hear of a few things potentially getting started. I can name about 4 or 5 sites where there potentially could be some progress, and in each instance they're stalled and they're stalled and they're stalled. How do we make a difference? Because this town, this city needs a hotel. End of. If you listen to Sean Murray, right, that's the story you get. We're turning away mega conferences, right? So what is the thing that gives us a hotel in the shortest period of time, extra rooms, because we're losing business right now, today, because of this?
So, and Nicholas can cover this a bit later in PX in terms of the update, but look, 2 things, Mayor Paula. One is there was a meeting yesterday with a specialist in this area to potentially, someone we may engage to help us progress the exact matters you referred to, but essentially it's funding. It's the funding model to ultimately fund the development, the build, development and ownership of a facility that a hotel would then be operated from. That's the key. If you nail it down to one thing, that is the gap that we are working to resolve. And so there is limited scarce funding, and that funding is currently being prioritised to those other, what I refer to as tier 1 hotel destinations. And that is the fact.
So are there any tools that we've got, either through fast tracking, through partnership, through the Municipal Endowment Fund, I don't know, is there anything that we've got that we can do? Because we can't have developers not necessarily being good to go for their hotel and then being in the way of someone else, vice versa. We need genuine.
There are, and that's part of why we want to engage this a specialist advisor to work with us on that. But I mean, ultimately it will be, and I think the chair has referred to some things that council may be working with.
Through you, Mr. Chair, do you feel that some of those mechanisms that you highlighted before in your questions are the way to turn it?
Really good question, Mayor Paula. Certainly in the last couple of months, as we've become more aware of deals that we thought were in train having stalled, we've now gone back and sort of said, well, the MEF would consider an equity stake. Council may consider adding some land to the mix to try to reduce the barrier to entry, to be an equity stakeholder. We've done that in the past. We did it with the Novotel. It made money in the end, and of course it's been an incredibly important economic enabler. So we are now making a very clear message, and I know Sean, the General Manager, Sean Murray, knows this is our #1 priority. This is his area of expertise. He knows that we're expecting a result. I know Nicholas is helping him. So we've now put that in the mix.
Yeah.
To try to
I
attract.
appreciate everything that you're doing. I know, and you regularly update me, Ewan, so I'm really appreciative of that. At the end of the day, does anybody see, because I'm an optimist, does anybody see a hotel being under construction within 2 years? Because we are bleeding events at the moment. Is it? Can we do it?
I'm of the opinion that if we feel focused and determined, we can make that happen. And the good news is, every report that we've engaged says not only will we attract more events, but what's really encouraging is that the demand is from business and government travel, which gives you the continuity throughout the year to underpin the business model. So I'm hopeful.
Blair, Mike, can you see it happening? Can
Look,
you see anybody who's worth working with can get this done?
Look, I think we need to be realistic here. I think that we working very closely with the MEF advisory group, we understand the absolute critical importance of this to the council. I can assure you that we are looking at all and every opportunity, but I think we need to be realistic in terms of the time to assemble the funding, the design requirements, but certainly, Mayor Paula, it is our focus that within the term of this committee, that a hotel development is secured. And that's the outcome we understand. But a number of things have to line up for that to occur. And I think we just need to work together, and certainly through Nicholas, I'll be asking him to bring that advice to this committee, and that may include also having external parties provide some information to assist in terms of your real understanding and the options available to us.
Perhaps we need to get together a forum.
Yep.
Can we do that?
Or a task force.
Yeah, a task force on this thing. Sorry, I'm afraid I have to go, and that's a shame because I would have had things to say in debate, but I'm sure you can hear how frustrated I am about this.
And I would just say in terms of the task force, you have that already in the endowment, an MEF working party, so that is, it can be
Hopefully
convened
I'll
at any
be back
time.
for Mike's update too and see how this goes. Sorry.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Councillor Bidder.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. What consideration has been given to Airbnb in the whole visitor accommodation mix?
In regards to what?
In relation to there's demand for a hotel, that demand could be satisfied in part or possibly even in full by Airbnb, or developers of hotels might be concerned about competition with Airbnbs.
So look, I may need to refer that specific question to to GM Sean, who's just not here today. But I would refer back to the report that we have circulated that provides economic analysis, that provides a very comprehensive analysis of the demand and supply of the Hamilton and wider accommodation market, and that contemplated that topic. So and that was still very convincing in terms of the need for another hotel.
Having read the report just again recently and refamiliarised myself with it, I can confirm that without Airbnb, at the same time as we had mandatory COVID hotel shutdowns for isolation, this city would have been in significant difficulty.
Yes.
The report shows that even when all of those hotels are back online, and they are now back online, and all of the Airbnb capacity is added, there is still a gaping hole of unsatisfied demand.
Yes.
And there is at least 220 rooms that are required at a 4-star level. The report also talks about the gap in the motel and the 3-star type level. So they're not mutually exclusive.
Correct, yeah.
What is driving our current focus is in that 4-star. So I don't believe that the barrier to entry is potential or developers being concerned about Airbnb.
Yes.
I think they see other opportunities in other cities, but I'm also of the opinion when we've had 3 or 4 say, yep, we're ready to go, a couple have been consented, and then they stall, there's something else going on.
Yes.
And I intend to try to get to the bottom of it.
And I think the key there, through the chair, is that the hotel operators aren't necessarily the investors who own the property, and that is part of the challenge. And so it's the investors or the funding partnership that owns and develops the building is the key here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are the developers and the financiers, and that's what makes them vulnerable.
Yes.
Because if they're a developer and they've got other land, or that they're interested in doing other developments in the city, they're very mindful of who they and where they participate and develop, if you see what I'm saying.
Yes. One more question about the MEF. In the attachment, we have identify and propose investment options for the MEF is at 75%. But there is nothing in the comments. Could we just have a little bit more information about what opportunities have got at that 75%?
Look, I'm mindful of those are covered in more detail on the PX agenda. So suffice to say that in front of the working party and reported in PX are a range of initiatives that the fund can be deployed into, to covering a broad range of opportunities that speak to the outcomes of this committee. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Right, well, that's a good, where we went pretty fast initially.
may I just ask a question? Good questions,
Yep.
good conversations. So I'm assuming that this format is working.
It is particularly helpful because it clearly shows to everybody in a succinct and easy to interpret way where we are. Yep.
Good. I mean, I think that, you know, if I'm frank, this was a first go at it, so there will be some variability in some of the scores, and we haven't probably got some of the colours quite right, but we wanted to test it out in a real-world environment and take a bit of critique through the way.
Great.
So I'll take that as a...
All right, everybody, I've moved, sorry, Anna.
Because I'm just wondering how those are set. Are they just through the managers, I guess? They get determined, the tasks on the report.
The tasks,
No, you signed them off at the beginning of this triennium at the first Economic Development Committee. You were there, I remember. You were even wearing
I
the same
probably
orange
was.
jacket.
I guess I didn't recall the shaping narratives one, so I'd be interested to talk more about the economic growth mindset, which I think relates to Sarah's questions, just to broaden that out a little bit, if possible.
On the issue of sustainability.
Yeah, around the
Yeah,
shaping
yeah.
narratives, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
sure. Mike, I might get Mike to pick that up.
So the tasks, as the chair said, came directly from sort of our 3-year plan. And again, putting them in this framework where you assign progress to them is quite tricky. Some were quite obvious and easy. So for example, in our business engagement, we set out very clearly a number and we look at what we had done and you just do simple math, there you go. I guess we could look to create or add elements of those particular areas and track them. I guess I'm just mindful of what we set out to achieve originally and signed off. You know, I just want to be mindful that we're adhering to those, making sure we're putting the resources to achieve them. If there's a characterization that we can change to make it more obvious or clear on some elements, I think we definitely can do that in a second version.
Mike, because in terms of the economic growth mindset, I mean, you just mentioned before it's more about adding value than it is just growth for the sake of it. So that would speak more to that, changing that up a bit in my mind.
Councillor, I think where that came from was going back to conversations we had, and I think GM Sean mentioned them as we were shaping this around doing the work as other parts of council look and focus on their areas of priority, that we're bringing a employer, business, economic lens to it. That's where that comment originated. I think, you know, if you're referring to a sustainability element, I'd want to go away and understand, are we best positioned to be carrying that through council, or I guess vice versa, are we going to work with those best positioned to that to give effect to it through business and employers?
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm happy just to look at, I mean, if we need to just add in something like adding value in the wording there, but
Yeah.
I'm very conscious these are reflective of what has been signed off. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, so item 7, General Manager's report on page 18. I'm happy to move the staff recommendation, which simply is we receive the report, seconded by Councillor Donovan, and I'll open it up for debate. Councillor Cash.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment to thank the staff for that table on page 22. Found it really useful, easy to understand, and it allows us to ask the questions that we just did. So thank you, Blair and team. Love it.
Wonderful. Deputy Mayor Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, I'll be really brief. Yes, also very good report. It's always quite difficult to, or quite blunt actually, to measure this way, but it's a really good start, and at least we'll be able to track some trends. Just on, and I know this is not really what the report is really about, in terms of the hotel, it's been a really long journey and we haven't been able to achieve anything. And I think we do need to keep in mind, as the General Manager has said, you know, not only is land incredibly expensive, but once a hotel is built, it's one of the most expensive buildings, I guess, to manage and maintain, because it's bedrooms and people are using them and its facilities, and that the economics of it doesn't stack up in many cities in New Zealand, let alone in Hamilton. So I think fundamentally that's the issue that perhaps these big hotel chains are facing, and we have to see the reality in that. Like you, Chair, have said, really to help with that, and I'm not sure that that's the ratepayers' role, maybe it is for council to partner, because that's the only way we're really going to move the dial on this. It's not like a commercial industrial building that you build and it pretty much takes care of yourself. So I think we need to keep that in mind and be real about that.
Councillor Anna.
Yeah, thank you, and particular thanks to the staff for addressing the staff action around reporting back on some of the sustainability aspects. It's really encouraging to see some of the work that's coming out. I'm particularly happy to see the commitment from the technology sector around the multimodal transport options. I think that's really exciting, and their interest there. I'm interested in the manufacturing around their commitments to sustainability, and I note that there's 50% that perhaps aren't doing so much, so it'd be interesting to see what could be done there to support them some more. But generally, just I'm happy to see this narrative becoming more prominent in the discussions in this committee, so thank you.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. After a deep analysis, I can confirm that I am satisfied with the colours on the chart, and that percentages can be accepted as a broad measure, so that we don't need to differentiate between 37.5% and 38%. We can just sort of round that, so that's good. Following on from what Deputy Mayor Angela said, the older model for hotel developments and ownership, which involved actually selling individual rooms to investors, that model got destroyed by interest deductibility and the removal of depreciation. So financially, it is very hard to get a hotel stacking up without a partnership model. So I'm not surprised. High-rise construction is also extremely expensive. You might be saving on less land, but low-rise is much cheaper, which is why Airbnbs are affordable, and Chair Ewan's comments about the difference between like 4-star hotel accommodation not being in any competition with Airbnbs, that is true, but we still have a gap in accommodation at the Airbnb level, and I do wonder about rule changes to make Airbnbs easier being helpful to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no doubt that the hotel industry or the hotel business is complex, but we don't need to go very far to see a model which has worked in the past. And the model which worked in the past was the equivalent of the day of the MEF participated with Tainui and Accor, and we built the Novotel. When the city exited it made money. It continues to derive a significant economic return because of the overnights that it enables. The two latest reports confirm that, and I think staff are looking at trying to get an updated one. I'm also mindful that if there wasn't money to be made in hotels, the Novotel and the Ibis here in Hamilton wouldn't have just expanded as they have. And I'm also mindful that the analysis says that the hotel proposition in Hamilton is not just events that go peaks and troughs, but there is a very clear line that shows on any given day there's a lot of government and business accommodation overnight, and that underpins the economic business profitability model of a hotel. I'm also mindful that a number of developers have got to the point where they've invested copious amounts of money in doing resource consents, and then suddenly it hasn't gone forward. And I would be horrified to think that other players in the industry are leaning on them saying, look, we don't want you to put another hotel here. That would be very unfortunate. MEF needs to continue to focus. We need another four-star hotel. And so I'm going to continue to try to push for that. Right. No other speakers? I'll put the motion to receive the report. All those in favour say aye. Those against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Excellent. Moving along at high speed. Item 8, external agencies. Blair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have two guests today. We have the Chief Executive of Te Waka, Fiona Carrick, who's going to give a short presentation on Te Waka activities, their report and their intentions looking forward, and also the Chief Executive of Civic Assurance, Charlie Howe, first time in front of elected members to also provide an update on Civic's activities and a brief touch on their financials as well. So I might invite Fiona to come forward. And excuse me, there is a copy of the presentation in attachment 3 in your reports.
Fiona, a very warm welcome. You're not a stranger to this chamber.
No, I'm not. Kia ora koutou.
We're in your hands.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for having me today. I will take the presentation as read and just wanted to take a few moments of your time to highlight where Te Waka has been focused in the last year and where we're focusing for the future. So we have refined our focus very much onto industry growth and investment attraction in key sectors. We do this in partnership with iwi, local authorities, industry and other business partners. We make sure that when we are focused on those two particular areas, we're measuring what we are doing and the impact it's having in terms of value transfer into the region. Specifically, whether it is regional strategic partnership funding that goes directly to businesses to support either growth or maintenance, or in some cases, automation or innovation. We ensure that we are attracting investment for those industries where there is capacity and supply. It's always important in economic development to look at the capacity and supply conundrum, which I think you've just had quite a discussion around. And similarly, when we are looking at international trade, it's great to have FTA agreements and we stay closely aligned with NZTE. It's translating that into actual action at ground level in our region for those businesses that may already have international relationships or those looking to get into having an international relationship. So one of the key areas we have focused on recently is the United Kingdom New Zealand Free Trade Agreement, the first of its kind to have a specific Māori chapter, which is very important to our region. And we were fortunate to host the trade envoy and welcome him alongside Mea Paula to the region prior to field days and create a number of connections directly with industry and business to ensure that that FTA is optimised. We also work at an industry level on renewable energy. You will have noticed in the presentation there is a whare around our regional economic priorities. One of the 6 priorities is around renewable energy. Our role in that is to ensure we are across not just those looking to build solar farms or invest in offshore wind, but also the regulatory framework. We do work closely to provide submissions on what it means for our region, not just economically and employment, but long-term, the supply of renewable energy and those factors in the market that may disrupt or increase that, i.e. the move to hydrogen. Similarly, at one of our other sector focuses around food and agri, providing that access to those large organisations like Foodstuffs for small producers and existing producers. It doesn't just have to be food. It can be automation services, it can be racking services, to actually be able to connect directly with procurement. So those are some of the examples where we have translated value into the region and enabled a facilitation that enables long-term economic growth. We also focus on technology. We hosted Tech Week, and our networking function had over 70 students attend. There were buses put on from other areas. Again, this was held in Hamilton. And 14 employers were there with teams of people. There were not necessarily a specific job. It was an opportunity for individuals to get to know what the opportunities are in our region and just how much innovation and tech and digital opportunity there is. We are aware of 2 people that were employed by companies as a result of that. Those are some of the examples. A key other area that we do provide is a toolkit, and we have refreshed our toolkit. That toolkit is available, it's images, it's stories for all industries, organisations in the Waikato. They can download those images. We have over 4,000 registered users. We have updated that to reflect more advanced manufacturing and technology imagery. We've updated that in the last year. Sorry, I'm croaking. And another key piece is our advocacy around particular areas. So we have put in submissions to the Productivity Commission around economic resilience and what it takes around capacity and supply. And that's just not necessarily in markets. We're very fortunate, and I do thank Blair for this, to be a part of Futureproof, a non-voting member of Futureproof, that enables us to provide an economic development overlay to those infrastructure capacity constraints that we have. We've also seen that partnership in action with the Growth Tour in March with the Hamilton City Council. Now, whilst these may seem like just events, it is the activity after the event that enables improved efficiency for the way we get our share of voice through, not just to central government, but to industry as well. And I'd just like to acknowledge that. Offshore wind regulatory framework is another area where we provided feedback. It's important that our region is considered as the future energy leader for the country. We are the only region that has geothermal, hydro, onshore wind, offshore wind and solar. Of course, there are some challenges there around a portfolio approach in the National Policy Statement on Sensitive Soils. And what that means for a metro city at our hub is an increased demand for skills and talent, and similarly to your point around hotels, for accommodation. We have the opportunity as a region, and Hamilton as a metro city, to become like the Iceland of geothermal, or the Taupo of geothermal, in that we could become an energy centre of excellence. So that is a significant opportunity for us, and it aligns strongly with our sustainability goals. So let's talk a little bit about Te Waka, its structure. We are supported across 10 local authorities. We are fortunate to be supported as part of the long-term plan funding. We are requesting to hold that funding for the next triennium at the same amount. We have taken into account over the last year what the challenges are, what a sustainable funding model is for an economic development agency, and we have compared ourselves to like economic development agencies and their local authority funding, not funding from programs. Programs are important that they are aligned with where they will have most impact, and that is why you have seen Te Waka move away from the Regional Business Partnership Program, and while that now resides in SODA. That is not a negative, that is where it will blossom more. We are at that macroeconomic level, working hard with industry and government to ensure that we are resilient as the third food basket of the nation. That funding is very much respected, and we very much do understand the challenges around ratepayer, taxpayer funding, and we do apply it very efficiently. We work closely to partner with other community organisations where it makes sense. We are part of what's known as the Te Waka Hub in Perry House, where there are 4 other community organisations where we enable a decreased overhead by sharing some services and a location. We would like to think about how we can take that wider in the region going forward, and that's something that Te Waka will undertake. Our future focus is very much on those areas where we can maintain sustainable growth, sustainable in both meanings, for the environment but also for the economy. Ensuring that we are driving impact that lifts prosperity for all. It's important that we don't decouple wellbeing outcomes from economic development outcomes. One does feed the other, and it's really important that we stay connected to that. There are other sort of what I would call blue sky, excuse the pun, opportunities in the region around aquaculture. Again, the opportunity for the Metro is around that skills, that talent, that place where people can come together to share ideas and also innovate around industry growth. And I think that's probably where I'll stop, and happy to take any questions or queries.
Thank you, Fiona. Some very good work there. I have a question online from Councillor Sarah.
Good morning, Fiona.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you for your very clear presentation. I was interested in your comment around Hamilton being a centre of excellence for renewable energy. And you mentioned needing to fill the demand around skills and talent as one example. So I'm just interested to understand a bit more around what you see as tangible actions to, in terms of the city or our collaboration with others, say through Future Proof, which could make a difference in the transition to renewable energy.
Thank you. I guess there's a couple of areas. I think in terms of the Future Proof piece, we are considering, and as part of the Future Development Statement, I think it's called strategy, sorry, there's too many acronyms, is how energy enables capacity for growth alongside roads, bridges, etc., and very much that portfolio approach. We are, as Te Waka, are also hosting a suppliers forum on the 26th of July in partnership with all our local authorities, which gives the opportunity to actually understand specifically what skill sets are required, what the opportunities are for all types of suppliers, whether it be engineers, landscapers, cleaners, caterers, technology experts, those types of things. At a macro level, as you may or may not be aware, ECA is working through regional energy transition plans. We have been in engagement with them around the Waikato's plan, given our potential, and feeding that through to Future Proof. So from a specific Hamilton point of view, let's keep doing what we're doing, let's keep operating in partnership, and let's stay connected.
Okay, and with Future Proof, when you say capacity, is that land and easy consenting pathways, or I'm just keen to understand what we should be keeping in mind when we're talking with future-proof partners?
Yeah, so in terms of Hamilton, unfortunately, I'm not aware of any land that would be appropriate for solar or onshore wind. So, however, in terms of, I don't think it would be a land discussion, it would be a skills and industry positioning discussion. For other local authorities, it is a land challenge or opportunity, whichever way you want to look at it.
I think just through the chair and just in support of the question, Sarah, Future-Proof obviously has Waikato, Waipa and Manamata-Piako, so I think some of those considerations could well be within the Future-Proof area, and as Fiona has referred, the offshore wind, some of those wind farms are proposed to be west of Raglan, so very much in our jurisdiction of Future-Proof.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Second question, just one other question was your comment around, I guess, the Waikato region being food basket. And obviously we're going to be facing a lot of challenges, as we've seen already in the Hawke's Bay area, around climate change, what that means for the future of food production. So I'm just interested in, firstly, what challenges you see there and what you might hope, what leadership you see the region needing to provide, through whichever forum that is.
Yeah. Kia ora. Thank you, Sarah. I think we obviously are going to have a constriction in terms of availability of raw inputs to produce protein or fat or any kind of food. That is something I think that industries in food production have recognised for some time. In terms of the agri-tech focus from our university and also the automation focus from many of the large providers and the low impact system changes we're seeing, keeping in mind that the region does have a hub of agri-tech focus, not just at the university but also with the Dairy NZs, etc. There is a lot of industry focus on how the same amount of protein and fat can be produced without the same level of impact or a lower level of impact. We are fortunate, and I would just like to acknowledge Tairāwhiti at the moment, having gone through another weather event, that a significant part of our region has not suffered that challenge, which does give some resilience to our food basket. So in answer to your question, there is a lot already going on led by industry to meet that challenge. As a region, I think it's about coordinating that opportunity to enable engagement internationally to protect our status as a low-impact food basket.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Anna Casey-Cox.
Thank you. Great presentation. I guess just a question around, I notice you've got in your whare, which is cool, your growth enablers, one of which is affordable housing. I know you're not
Axel.
Huge in that space, but I guess I'm just interested in your reflections on what employers are saying about the impacts of a lack of affordable housing. Yeah.
Sure. So I'd just like to acknowledge that Waikato Housing Initiative are part of our hub. And as a region, we are the only region that has a whare where the EDA focuses on enablers. Affordable housing, integrated affordability is a challenge. What we're hearing from employees and what we know from our experience around economic development is being able to offer a job but having lodgings that are safe, warm and affordable is critical. It's critical to that self-worth as well, being able to know it's your home that you can pass on in time. Now, whether that's secure tenancy or ownership, those are the challenges we've got. The key piece of feedback, I would say, from industry, especially given our sentiment survey that we just got out, is actually roading is the priority. They're struggling with roading to get access to and from their organisations. But then on affordable housing, it's a very close second or third. They would like to see projects happening. That is the key challenge. At the moment, as I'm sure you all know, average rent is around $600 a week. We do have I know that there is a fishing club, I can't remember the fishing club, that's taken a 5-year lease on 2 houses to enable them to house employees. So that's what you're saying, that's some of the behaviour, which unfortunately then takes those out of the turnover rental market. But that's what we're hearing.
That was really my question, if
Yeah.
employers were
Yeah.
stepping into that space at all,
Yeah.
providing
I've
housing.
got one example.
One example.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think, Councillor Anna, having both the Housing Initiative and Te Waka now around the future-proof table, I think means that those conversations can be joined up. So you've got the wonderful linkages of economic activity with housing need, along with our government and iwi partners. So I think it's a real opportunity for future-proof to build on its work to date with those lenses.
Thank you.
Councillor Emma.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just interested in your comments around the tech conference you held and also how you're looking to utilise partnerships more. I'm not sure if you're aware of the Tech in the Tron program, which is specifically around attracting and retaining talent, tech talent in Hamilton, and is supported by council. But just given your tech focus, is this a project that you've looked into working with to maximise resource and possibly reduce duplication?
So the Tech in the Tron was part of Cultivate IT. So we are a partner in Cultivate IT.
Good.
So the Tech in the Tron, was that last year, Mike? I think we launched Tech in the Tron. And the Tech Week initiative has been around for some time. So they're very much an amplification as opposed to a duplication.
Okay.
And our Tech Week event was very much focused, there weren't specific jobs, it was around showcasing the individual employers, and we also held a session for all the 70 students, and they were of varying ages, prior to the event, on interview skills. So it's a Tech in the Tron, which was a great success in terms of exposure and hits, and it remains, live. This was a maturation of that at a local level, so very much in line, and certainly not duplication.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Right. Fiona, I have a couple of questions. First of all, when I look back and I see the current cost that funding we provide to Waka, we appear to be getting a very good deal. So at $140,000 a year for all the work you do on behalf of the city, our contribution. So thank you, first of all. Second, is there an expectation under the LTP you're asking for the same level or more?
The expectation is the same level, and that's something that we have thought long and hard about, and we have actually done quantitative analysis on, given not just the economic forecasts, but the challenges we have in terms of ratepayers and taxpayers around how we can optimally and efficiently apply capital. And we've taken the opportunity to assess ourselves against other EDAs. Now, that then begs the question, what are we not doing and not asking for more? So we've gained efficiencies over the last year in the way we approach and utilising partnerships. And the things that we aren't sort of pursuing as much would be those newer areas around aquaculture. Now, that doesn't mean we're not doing it at all, but we're doing it at a minimal level as opposed to being able to set us up as a leader in that space. You can always do more with more, but it's the value proposition of that more. Is that more simply internally focused, or is there a direct value transaction out into the region?
Thank you. The hub model that's currently occurring, 10 years ahead, what could that look like? Who else could come under that umbrella?
So we have started some of those discussions. There is a number of opportunities for community, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of other, I refer to community organisations or regional organisations, to think about how some of our tactical tasks could be shared. So analysis, administrative support, etc. And we have had a couple of conversations. We've named it Wakatu Edge, just because that's what we thought would be a good name, around where are those interfaces in the lanes we're working in that we could more efficiently apply the funding, because we know and operate more efficiently for the future. 10 years' time, I'd like to see us operating with a wider hub, with more creative and community organisations, because as I pointed out, you can't decouple the two, you know, rising tide lifts all boats. And to ensure that we've got an innovation piece in there as well. So we are always challenging ourselves to innovate the way we do things. I would expect you would probably have 5 to 10 organisations with a clear purpose and strategy in terms of their brands and what they exist for, but far more amplified shared services in terms of how it's executed.
Thank you very much for that very clear explanation. Again, a wonderful presentation. Thanks for coming along today.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. Thanks. Charlie, I think you're next.
And I'm not sure whether Sarah, are you intending to support Charlie on this, or just support from the back? Yeah, okay. Charlie, come forward, please.
Colleagues, we'll break after Charlie for morning tea. The good news is the amazing Amy has baked some morning tea, which is very kind. Let that be a lesson to those of you who are on Zoom. With the exception of those who are looking after sick children, you miss out when you're not in the chamber. Charlie, we're in your hands.
Thank you. Morena whanau, he mihi nui, he mihi mahana, kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Ngāti Mani a poto te iwi, ko Ngāti te hinei te hapu, ko Piupiu te marae. I whānau mai hau Tamaranui, ko Charlie Hautokingawa, kia ora, huhui mai tātou. Thanks very much for having me. As you've heard, my name's Charlie. I'm the Chief Exec for Civic Financial Services Limited, and really to wrap it up in a nutshell, I'm here to look after your kaimahi. I'm here to look after their savings for their retirement, for that staff member that has that first home opportunity to get into, for that kaimahi who's really struggling, has some real hardship issues. And I'd like to actually make our services a lot more wider than that. But I thought it was important to sort of share with you that my role is just, it's about people. And I really want to acknowledge some of the councillors this morning when they talked about thanking their kaimahi for the work they do. I don't think we do enough of it, actually. And I really admire that, that you should acknowledge that, because it's the people that actually get Hamilton City where it needs to get to. And I think sometimes we sort of tend to sort of push that to the side. And that's why it's a real privilege for me to be in this role as the CE. Look, my background is I spent 40 years in corporate, in one bank actually. I retired as the general manager for the ANZ, looking after the business sector. And I looked after a lot of people. I had the opportunity of working in different communities in New Zealand. In fact, I worked across the road at Garden Place branch here in 1980. I had time in Matamata branch, and so I have got some ties to Hamilton, and I know what Hamilton looked like back in those days. In fact, I was privileged enough to play for a very famous Cambridge softball team called Cambridge Balding when Kevin Hurley was playing. And the place it goes around in a big circle. But the reason why I'm here today is to share with you what is Civic Financial Services. It's no longer really working in the space of insurances anymore. We're really trying to focus our business in the world of superannuation, ensuring that your kaimahi have a reasonable retirement fund when they actually retire. And you'll be surprised that our numbers are quite large. Look, I'm not going to go through every slide on the presentation. It's there for you to have a look at. But our memberships is really interesting. Our numbers are not as great as I thought they would be, but I know that we can get them bigger. Hamilton City Council have over 380 members that are what we call Super Easy KiwiSaver members. We also have another superannuation scheme, which is the Local Government New Zealand scheme. You guys have probably about 12. Our total membership in New Zealand's around about 11,500 now, and growing. About 9,100's in KiwiSaver, and the rest is in the other local government superannuation scheme. So this is the story. I'm giving a renewal or refreshed story around the country about what we are, what we're doing, and what we need to do, what we need to look like going forward. And it's quite different. If you go to one of the pages on my presentation, I've sort of done a sort of a group structure, and you can see the arms of the civic group. There's two big arms, really. One goes to the superannuation pathway, and then there's another one that's gone to what we call the risk pool insurance pathway. We have a lot of historic claims in that risk pool space, which we're still working through. We also have this little dotted line at the top that's heading towards a group called LAP, which is Local Authority Protection Plan. We still insure underground insurance for about 22 councils who still wanted to have a mutual fund, and those are more or less the smaller councils. And we've been running with them for quite a while now. And I suppose whatever happens with water reforms going forward, that potentially could disappear. We don't know. We're keeping that entity running so we see what's happening around the corner. But I suppose the most important thing that you want to know is what are you guys doing? Because we're actually owned by 72 councils out of the 78. I've supplied you with a statement of intent, which we've refreshed, and we intend to refresh it every year. The CE has that. We've also supplied all our financials for you to look at. They're all on our websites as well. I've basically spent my last 18 months in the organisation meeting and greeting people. There's lots of change in councils. Just a little reflection from my observation is that, you know, the superannuation scheme is a great way of retaining people. In actual fact, it's a great way of attracting people as well. So it's there. The actual pathways for that are there. We've had them for years, and it's my job to tell the story to all the councils. So after this meeting today, I have 2 sessions with Kaimahi at Hamilton City Council, which I'm going to give a more detailed presentation about what the superannuation schemes do. Yeah. Look, it's all in that presentation. I'm not going to go through it slide by slide, but I think it's important to understand my role and my background in banking. I'd like to make civic financial services a lot wider than just the super schemes, because I think Kaimahi needs some help in that finance space, in some basic budgeting, and some basic understanding on actually how to get a mortgage, and what other parties are involved when I get my first home. And then at the other extreme, when you get to the age of 50, 55, I'd really love to have someone that I could talk to about getting myself organised for retirement. I don't know what it's going to look like in 20 years' time, but if I start putting money away now, it's going to make a big difference for my retirement. So, you know, really at the beginning of the cycle of our new staff that come into councils, getting them up and running about, you know, what the KiwiSaver Fund does for them, and also the other fund that I talk about. And those who don't know about the other fund, it's been around, it used to be known as Super Plan in the old days. It's the old local government superannuation scheme. It's an employer scheme, really. That's the other scheme. So you can take your money out when you leave the council. Our super easy KiwiSaver scheme, whānau can join the scheme. And not many people know this. So what I'm doing is I'm going through the country and I'm refreshing our story and letting people know what we can do. The biggest thing I get asked is, why would I want to bring my KiwiSaver to Super Easy? And I just let them have a choice. I explain to them that we've got low fees. Our management fees 35 basis points compared to an average KiwiSaver of around about 84 basis points. Some of them up to 1.2%. Some of the big banks are charging some massive fees. We have good returns. We have a fund that no one's ever heard of. It's called the Automatic Fund. And it predicts, based on your age, what your risk profile should be for you, so you don't have to actually worry about it. Automatic Fund, yeah. It was created by a couple of actuaries that were part of the company years ago, and lots of other providers have tried to copy it, but they haven't been very successful because it calculates the risk every month based on your age. And funny enough, when we explain that to members who join up, 80% of our membership are on the Automatic Fund. And of course, you know, you can actually get your parents, your kids, can actually come alongside your KiwiSaver. They can actually sign up as well. And I'm amazed that it's one of those best kept secret stories I hear every time I go in and speak about it. But this is the role that I have, and I think I've got a duty on behalf of the councils to tell the story nice and strong. So Kaimahi actually have got a choice, and that's all we're asking for staff, is for them to have a choice and for them to understand what are the benefits that we're offering. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I see we've got a couple of questions, Charlie. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlie, for your presentation. I have quite a specific question in our report, or in your report, and committee members, I'm on page 32. Just in terms of interests register, Charlie, you'll be aware of the extraordinary events in the political scene about conflicts of interest and registering them. I was just wondering if Civic is looking into any review of your processes, or you're quite confident that what you've got allows directors to be fully transparent.
Yeah, very confident about that, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxine, and then Councillor Anna Casey-Cox.
Kia ora, Charlie, and welcome for your first visit to our council in person. I'm sorry I'm not there in person today, but family circumstances mean that I'm online. I'm really delighted to hear about the work that you're doing with our Kaimahi to educate them about your services and the benefits for them in being a member, specifically the low fees that you talk about. It's easy to say low fees, but when you talk about the percentages that you offer, I'm really encouraged that that is a clear benefit for our members. Many people will, of course, these days have a KiwiSaver account, whether it's by way of an employer fund or a more formal fund. It's perceived as being really difficult to move or change from where you are currently to a new fund. How can you make it easy for our staff to be able to take up your services and get those benefits of low fees?
If the staff member has an IID number, I can get them on in 5 minutes. So the realities in the past is that we were a very paper-based organisation. Over the last 18 months, we've probably automated most of our processes, probably about 80%. A whole new website refreshed. We have portals online. So Kaimahi can actually jump on our website, and there's a big fat join button they press, and it actually takes them 5 minutes to go through that, and they're a member of Super Easy KiwiSaver or local government superannuation scheme. So that's the story that I'm going around the country now. And look, the digital world has changed, and I heard some discussion around that. To actually get out to the people that you want to get out to, you've got to be digital. You've got to get yourself up to speed, because before you know it, tomorrow you're outdated. You know, in the organisation that I look after, it's a small company. You know, and the only reason why we're actually been able to pay low fees is because the council, all the councils, have agreed that the dividends that we would be paying councils every year are used in the reduction of our fees for our members. And I reckon that's a great way of actually sharing that with your staff. And look, it's a lot easier to join our scheme now. I'm actually running a digital whānau campaign for the next 4 weeks over July. And, you know, it's easy. I'm not involving the council to do this. It's all done digitally, and it's going to be a lot easier for people to join. And that's the way of the future. Definitely the way of the future. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie. I get a lot of benefit from being able to see my balance on an ongoing basis. I can just log in and see it. I also get a text from my organisation to tell me about what my balance is and how it's performing. Is that the kind of reporting that your individual kaimahi and members have access to as well, that you're talking about in terms of digital?
Yes, they can access their balances twice a month. So we do it we update. Remembering we're only a small company, we're running really lean and mean to make sure that the money actually goes in the back pockets of our members, not the company. So we would love to be like the big banks and provide you with balances. I'm not sure if that's a very healthy thing to do, actually, particularly over the last 18 months. It's been a pretty tough time in the markets. But yes, we provide all that stuff that you spoke about. But even better than that, you can actually talk to someone in our office. You can actually talk to the CEO. I speak to members regularly on a daily basis. I help them. I'm not a financial advisor, and I tell them that up front, and I tell them most of my presentations. But I actually give them an example of what I would do with my experience that I've had in banking and looking after lots and lots of people. They can take that, but I certainly give them the opportunity of going seeking a financial advisor. Yeah.
Thank you. And look, my final question, thank you, Chair, for the indulgence, is the best time for someone to join is when they first start at work.
Yeah.
What kind of tools have you got available for our people managers and our organisation to help people understand that you're around and their ability to be able to join your organisation?
So Hamilton City are a default provider. So anyone new that comes into Hamilton City, by the way, Hamilton City are actually probably one of the fastest growing membership numbers actually for the last 18 months since I've been around, do this really well. So as a default provider, that new staff member goes into a pool for 3 months. IRD have made regulations around that before it comes to super easy. It needs to be in a pool with IRD for 3 months. It gives the staff member an opportunity to think about other providers out there. But what we do, once we know that that provider's coming to Super Easy, we actually give them a ring and say, hey, we're Super Easy. This is Jen from our office. Here's the phone number. We'll be sending out emails once you officially come on board. This is how it all works. This is how you access your membership number. And then 30 days after that, we do a follow-up with another email just to make sure they're okay. And that tends to be working really well for us. We never did this probably 6 months ago, but we've noticed that a lot more members are staying with us rather than just disappearing once they've initially come in. So the onboarding practice process is definitely working for us. Yep.
Right, sounds super cool. Thank you for your excellent work.
Right,
Chair.
yes. Pleasure. Anna Casey Cox.
Kia ora, Charlie. Thank you for your presentation. Just a few questions. I was excited to hear about the support that's offered people to potentially access their first homes. Yep. How common is that?
So on average, we have about 112 members a year that obviously are very successful with their first home application. So we're about 112 on average a year. And I'd like that to get bigger. And I like to run awareness seminars for our kaimahi around the country. There's lots of things I'd like to do now, but I've just got to I've just got to build up that that sort of resource.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. That's something of my next question, really, in terms of you're wanting to expand what you do and offer. I appreciate that, particularly around the financial support to people and education.
Yep.
So what is it that you would be, I guess, asking of us in that regard, and if you were to expand your services?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually talking to a couple of partnerships, and having spent 3.5 years as the director for Māori and Pacific and MSD, I learned a lot about partnerships. You know, it is having 500 cups of teas and actually understanding who you're partnering with. We're actually going to be partnering with a national broker unit who are spread all around New Zealand because that's where the councils are. And I want to make it easier for kaimahi to talk to people without having any ties to any bank. Mm-hmm. And I like the independency thing that might bring. We're very much in the talking stages, but I think those types of organisations have very good calculators, mortgage calculators, savings calculators, and we'd like to actually get access to that for our kaimahi as well. Mm. So those are the sort of things that we're looking at doing.
Okay.
But give me a couple of years, because I think we've still got a lot to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kia ora. And my last question relates to the investments, I guess, of the
Yep.
funds.
Yep.
Just the ethical nature of those or your
Very strong,
commitments?
yeah. So we don't manage the fund. We have two managed fund managers. One is the ANZ investment team. It's the biggest in New Zealand. They manage pretty close to $37 billion. Not that because I've spent 40 years in the ANZ, but they come with strong background. They've been with Civic for a number of years. And we also have Harbour Management Asset Team as well. So the idea is that you don't want to have your fund managers in-house, because if they're not performing, you can't kick them out, I suppose is the right way of terming them. So we hold those fund managers accountable, not only for their performance, but definitely in that space of the environmental social governance space. Yeah. They have to show us and prove us at our board meetings, every time we have them in, first topic on their agenda is ESG. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Prove to us that you're actually doing that.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, that brings us to moving the recommendation on page 23, which is to receive the report. Councillor Mark will move, Councillor Andrew will second. All those in favour say aye. Those against?
Carried unanimously.
Morning tea, muffin in the coffee room.
Just before we go for morning tea, just Charlie mentioned the statement of intent. Elected members may recall at the last meeting you considered and approved the statement of intent for civic assurance. So
yeah, thank you. Morning team, we're going to talk to your kaimāhi now.
Cool. Back at 1:15. Are you bundling things? Okay.
Yeah.
Right, we are now on the exciting item 9, Strategic General Update, and I believe this will be Mike.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll defer to Blair if needed, but really I just wanted to take the report as read as usual, but really highlight a couple key things. As we, I guess, had a bit of a prelude last meeting, and now we're there on the employer relationship update. The report focuses heavily on our proactive employer engagement work, led by Arif Khan, who joined us in February. And really what's come of that, the basic bit of it is just the dogged hard work of building those relationships with businesses, which in my view and my experience in economic development is absolutely the foundation of really everything you do, is not just rocking up. Even on like a business attraction effort, if you show up with a prospective company at a Rabobank or a wherever and you want to share with them the perspectives of being in Hamilton, all the upsides of that, that shouldn't be the first time you're sitting down with that company. So Arif has done some tremendous work building those relationships, and the manifestation of that are 2 reports that are attached to this, focusing on manufacturing and our tech, agri-tech, and innovation sector. A third, focusing on logistics, was just being finalized when these reports were due. And then a summary of all the 3 of them was just finished in this week. So those latter 2, the logistics and the summary report, will work with governance to make sure that you get. As our website work improves in the coming weeks, we'll make sure that those are up there as well. So really want to underscore, and not go too deep into it, but the amount of work that goes behind that is effectively 4 to 5 months of in-depth, in-person conversations with a number of companies across a number of sectors, and it's really been amazing, the information that we can glean out of that. The last bit I'll add on that is we really look at that work as a companion to the brilliant work done by Tiki and the team around the annual economic report that was put out a couple weeks ago. That report is full of data and statistics and in a really presentable way, but it's grounded in, that evidence fact base. What Arif has done and his work is really resonates and I guess adds color to some of that in a real world context. So those are the 2 bits that I'll highlight, and happy to take any questions.
Before I go to questions, I just want to comment. I understand the amount of work that's gone in behind doing this, and I just want to send a clear message to the team. Thank you. Having dynamic and real data is such an powerful tool in good governance and understanding what's going on. So, Mike, and to your team, thank you. Councillor Sarah?
Yeah, and also thank you, Mike and team. Really good report. And I guess what I'm interested in is what do we do with the data? And there are some things that are very much within council business and the scope of what we do. So I'm just wondering how we kind of pull those out in terms of highlighting them for our long-term plan.
Yeah, excellent point. I think that's where we're, as it was just finished last night, and Arif made the point this morning, we're going to sit down. We already have a bunch of them pulled out, so a great one that came both from manufacturing and the logistics sector. Couldn't rave enough about their current state on certain things like Ruakura and the expressway, but all of them were quite pointed in saying, where's the next phase of land that's suitable for those type of uses? And I know that that's in other committees, that's a subject of great interest. So how can our work inform that? I think to your question as well, I think the more that we can use our work and relationship to pull those people into the discussions and get their feedback as council goes through them, I think are important. One clear, tangible one that came off was those looking at workforce training initiatives weren't really finding them as accessible or useful. So I think we want to go back and revisit with them and understand exactly what that is and see how we can play a role in that. And then last point is to be very clear, a lot of businesses said, we're really glad you're here to listen to us and take it into account, but just know that we're not looking to you to fix that problem. But it's good that we've aggregated it and identified it as a problem affecting everyone.
Yeah, okay, cool, thank you. And Mike, public transport was mentioned in here as something important to some of the employers at least. And obviously there's going to be conversations in the LTP around that. But I'm interested, did anyone talk about, I guess, the need for public transport or transport options for shift workers? And we heard recently when we were at Anglican Action that was a barrier to employment for a number of people, given that they were needing to start work at 4 o'clock in the morning or something. So did any of that come through?
It didn't come across in terms of time. It came across in terms of reliability and physical location. So a lot of people were saying that from where my employees live to where they work, it's not easy. It's 1 every hour or less, and the reliability was in question. So I think having all of it down, I think what I'd love to do is to take some of these key ones and re-engage with them with specific things as whether it's LTP or work of other committees that we can help inform those key bits. But the actual timing bit never came up, no.
Okay, now that would be really valuable to understand more around that link between, say, transport and what we do and then those businesses' needs. The other question I had was, at the moment, we're hearing a lot from the Infrastructure Commission around the need to make better use of infrastructure, and I see like congestions in here. We're also hearing, concerns around water and the availability of that. Can you talk a little bit more about what you heard around those concerns?
Yeah, and if I miss anything, RF's here to fill in. But from a congestion perspective, I think a bit of it was perception, not reality. I think a lot of people were just frustrated that they couldn't just go through a roundabout without stopping anymore. You might have to wait 1 or 2 cars, was kind of the vibe we got, particularly in the employers that run trucks in areas that are now diversifying. I think they used to have the run of things and now they don't anymore. So the specifics on the congestion, I think it's just there's more than there was before. But I think any objective study would show you that we're not experiencing issues in the way that maybe other places are. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything, RF, but yeah.
Okay, and we heard it was the availability of water was also a concern in an article yesterday, and talked about what the Work Regional Council had been doing.
Yeah, so for us, when it came to employers, this didn't come up as much. I think that's probably more in the space, and perhaps Greg and Tiki can speak to, around developers. I think where our employers mentioned in a positive way that they saw areas like Peacock and other planned developments as great options as they continue to want to retain and attract talent. So on the quality of life side. But it didn't come up specifically in that way in our chats.
Yeah, okay, so it's more for the new players.
I think so, yeah. And again, we were focused on employers, not so much developers, and certainly not housing developers. Yep.
Cool, all right, thank you.
Yep.
I think just as an extra comment, Councillor, you will have noted Fiona Carrick referred to transport was the number one matter that they have picked up through their sentiment surveys with businesses. So that sort of speaks to what Mike has also touched on there. So, and I guess transport solutions, connections, logistics and transportation, they're interlinked.
And I guess is just interested, while it might not be such an issue now, it's an extremely big issue in terms of productivity in places like Auckland, and they're looking at, actually what do we do around congestion charging at this point to enable businesses to keep delivering goods and get to site. So I think it possibly needs to be part of a very long-term conversation that we think about it as a city.
I think one of the key strengths that almost every employer mentioned, so put logistics aside, but every employer as it related to their people, that one of the key values of operating in, we'll say Hamilton Metro, was that they had staff that has a wide range of living choices, not just from a cost perspective, but just lifestyle, and yet all of them could still access the office in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable commute if they so chose to. And that they viewed that as a real competitive advantage to being here, is that you could have Ngaruahia, Matamata, Raglan, Cambridge, and Hamilton Central as viable living options for staff.
Thank you.
And I just final comment I'll make is that the MSP Transport, that's through the Strategic Growth District Plan Committee, talks about mass modal movement of people, alternatives to the car, but it also has a theme around economic and freight. So it's the employment lens. So it is not lost in terms of that study, that there is a critical role here to think about our transport networks, not only in terms of how we move people differently, but how we continue to support that economy. And that picks up on your questions there, Councillor.
Colleagues, I've got Maxine, and then I've got Councillor Anna.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike and Arif, for awesome work, recognising that it's critically important to build relationships with employers and understand their barriers, and that it's quite a new process that we're developing through that. I wonder whether there was opportunity also to talk about what some of the solutions might be, and that might be about partnering and connecting up these employers with others who have already overcome some of those issues. And I reference, of course, the workforce planning and the transport issues as well, knowing that some employers subsidise public transport for their kaimaki, and whether or not those things are explored as well, Mike.
Absolutely. I think that's a key. Absolutely, that's a key part of the takeaway from this work. We're sharing with each sector, we're sharing this work back with those employers that we spoke to. And really where we want to take this is to gather them all together and have these conversations, and not so much a forum where they can, come and express frustrations, whatever it may be, but more, how do you all work together? And then how do we empower some of those key issues or key changes by connecting them in? So that's really the key takeaway point from all of this work.
Thank you. It's terrific. Thanks, Chair.
Pleasure. Councillor Anna, you're good. Mike, I've got a question, or maybe it's one for Arif. If I look at the data or the feedback concerning growth enablers under the manufacturing, under the tech and innovation, they spoke about one of the barriers being a new business hotel and an improvement in hospitality. So my question is, I was surprised that the manufacturers weren't talking about that, and it was the IT. And could you expand on that and how you sort of brought all those threads together?
I think a bit of it came up when we had our session at Union Square. The bit I'll add, and Arif can fill in, really it came down to a lot of a talent attraction, but also in the course of doing business, it was stated it would be really helpful, and I think this ties into things like Central City Transformation Plan. How do we continue to build on the progress and make Central City, from a tech standpoint, a lot of those employers were focused on this area. How do we make it more of what a Union Square or other developments are foreshadowing?
I'll just add, it's also, if you're looking at it from a client relation lens, making sure Hamilton is viewed quite favorably when they're having clients visit, as far as entertaining them, hosting them. Accommodation is a big part of that, and also the hospitality offerings as far as entertainment. And obviously, as Mike mentioned, the attraction, talent attraction as well. So that's all I have to add.
Cool. Right, well, that's the only question I had. Oh, sorry, and I've got Councillor Cash.
Thank you. Just a couple which I think some have been answered. The feedback regarding the the public transport, regional transport, I think Sarah did ask, would all of that feed back directly into infrastructure and those conversations within that committee? Do we have a system or process for that to happen?
In terms of the feedback that we receive from the employers, yeah, I think what we would look to do is, as these are now final, provide them through to relevant committees, and then look to where we can be that joiner, where if a committee has these issues, rather than, I think a lot of it is us doing the proactive work to kind of hear all the issues and pluses and negatives, but then it's our job then, I think, to pull out that, as you say, and feed it into the committees that are empowered to perhaps take action, and then encourage the businesses to, I guess, participate more and make their points known more directly to those who can influence it.
Thank you. And similar with the Eastern Transport Corridor, I understand that the business case is being done at the moment. Is that going to feed into the current LTP conversations that we'll be having over the next few months, or will we be waiting to hear from Waka Kotahi first?
Councillor Cash-Blair here. I mean, that will certainly feed into our LTP considerations.
Awesome. And last question, just regarding dwelling consents. You touched on it to say how low it was in May. Has that trend continued over June, or any thoughts?
Councillor, I think, were you referring to the material attachment 5, the building consents?
Yeah, 5 and 49.
Okay, I might just ask, we've got Tiki about to come up and just present and take some questions, so I'll just ask Tiki to address that when she speaks. So.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Blair. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Now, Councillor Anna, I have a note here that earlier on you had some questions that we suggested would better fit in this part.
Do you talk about the green growth in this report, that business? I guess I just have a question around that. I know a lot of the other councillors have been, I think, for a visit to green growth, but I haven't, and I guess I'm just reading from some of the examples overseas. It seems like there's some real challenges with those developments, and I'm interested that we are very positive in our discussions around it. I guess, do you have any knowledge of, I guess, research in other countries or even around New Zealand that might help inform whether this is only a positive development? I guess looking for more of a critical perspective.
Are you referring to Green Grower?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any knowledge around that. I think we haven't had a council tour there yet. There's been a number of different events that they've had, but on our list to do, and Tom, the CEO, has been quite open about it. I think they had a grand opening planned and had to defer it because of a ministerial scheduling issue, but our goal still remains this year to have a council or committee outing, really Innovation Park as a whole, but Green Growers specifically. I'm quite good relationship with him. I'm happy to have a chat with him to see if we can tease out any of this information, or we could do the research on our own.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, it might be, I had wondered whether there'd be a relationship with the university around that kind of thing with the business school there, just some support in terms of, I guess the challenges that those developments have faced overseas and how that might be relevant here.
Absolutely, yep, can do that.
Thank you.
I can add just very quickly to that. There was an official opening, and the Minister for Trade, and he held a number of portfolios, opened it. The university is very much involved, but it's Massey University.
Okay.
Massey University has been the principal academic advisor. The technology is Norwegian and Canadian. The data they provided was pretty impressive in terms of sustainability, but would be quite happy to organise a more in-depth tour. And what I did find of the young CEO is he was not at all hesitant in trying to answer the tough questions the journos threw at him. So if you've got some concerns or some questions, we can organise for you to challenge him and his proposal or concerns that you may have.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank
Yep.
you. Yep.
Cool. All right. I don't have any other questions. I'll just quickly add that, you know, when you look at attachment 1, 2, and 3, and 4, there is a huge amount of work that goes into producing that. And we cover this in 20 minutes and move on. But I don't want you to think that we don't read it. And I don't want you to think that we don't cherish the information because we find it very helpful and it's really appreciated. All right. So the next favourite part, Tiki, come and amaze us with all your data.
Kia ora koutou. I'm going to start with an incredibly shameless plug. You should all now have a hard copy of our 2022 annual economic report. If you ever need data or statistics about Hamilton, this should be the place that you start. And in the next probably week and a half, we'll be putting out our March quarterly report, hot on the heels of that, which has the March quarter data. So just, I guess, a couple of highlights from that. Overall, Hamilton saw some of the highest employment growth in New Zealand. And we also saw really solid above the sort of New Zealand average growth in things like GDP. I've included in the slide decks this time because I know councillors are really interested in comparisons between Hamilton and other metros. So you can see there, even on the things that weren't so great, Hamilton's still faring relatively well compared to other cities around New Zealand. On that consenting front, consents lodged have fallen. Consents granted for the last quarter or since from June to March has actually been better than we expected, but that pipeline of consents lodged, so there's not a lot that's come in May and June, some of the lowest levels that we've seen in a very long time. So I would expect in the coming months that the number of dwellings granted is going to really fall away. We have had a chat to a few developers, both residential and commercial, and the general vibe is that people are not starting new projects because the buyers just aren't there. Most developers are sitting and waiting and watching the market to see what's going to happen, which isn't surprising given the economic outlook. We've seen in Auckland that house sales seem to have picked up again. And with the high levels of immigration, we may see that housing market kind of come back up, or at least the demand for housing is going to increase. The demand for rental properties is going to get really, really high and tight. And so rents will inevitably go up, and there may be a better equation there for investors that drives increased demand for houses and investment properties in particular in that new build space. But other than that, happy to answer any questions that you might have from the report.
Councillor Sarah?
No, I was just thinking.
You can make a comment and pretend it's a question.
Thinking,
Just say, did you know?
It's slightly disheartening that that higher prices are what it drives more supply of housing, and so
Yeah.
Called Economics 101.
yes,
It's
problematic.
It's definitely problematic, and there's been some research come out of, I think it was ASB Bank a couple of days ago, that suggests that we're heading back into a housing deficit space instead of a housing, like an oversupply of housing. And obviously, by the time the market begins to react, because a developer won't build a house unless someone's going to buy it at a price that makes money, like it's a business at the end of the day. Unfortunately, that means there's usually a lag, and then you get that kind of like, we're trying to catch up on some demand that's been there for a while. But yeah, it is a bit depressing.
Councillor Pike?
I think my name was up there from the previous section, but I'm happy to take it offline.
No problem. Councillor Donovan?
Thanks, Chair. Tiki, great report, and team. And the building consents thing is obviously a bit of a concern, especially some of the stuff I'm hearing in public from developers, from the developers' quarters and whatnot. One of the things I was going to ask though was some of the metrics that you've got in here, commercial vehicle registrations being an indicator of economic confidence have fallen 24%. How deep do we go looking at what's causing that? Because the main reason I ask is because I know a lot of companies now incentivise staff to buy their own car, and so he takes it off the balance sheet for the business. So which obviously then means they're not out buying fleets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's a mix of a number of factors at play. One of them is that, but I think that's been happening over time, like it's been consistently building. It's not a switch, essentially, that's happened overnight. The reason we've included it this time is we're talking particularly around sort of, light trucks, those sorts of things that cost quite a bit of money.
Okay.
And where companies are like, don't know what our demand's going to be like, don't know what our income's going to be like, we'll just stick with this older vehicle for a little bit longer, or we'll run it to 120,000 Ks or 150,000 Ks instead of 100,000 on our fleet vehicles.
Yep.
That kind of like, we're just watching and waiting, and then we'll make our investment decision. So as I have said there, it's not as bad as some parts of New Zealand, but it is an indicator that people, not just developers, but across the board, are starting to sit on their hands and just watch and wait to see what happens.
Sure, thanks. That's good. And then the second question, if you will, or if I may, is spending being up. Is that a metric that measures is the costs of goods and stuff included in that number?
No, that's straight over-the-counter card spending. So when you go in, buy a coffee, tap your card, that's what's picked up within that.
Okay.
And it's a little bit above inflation. But if you look at, say, March to March, you'll see it's squeezing back down. And as, the cost of living generally goes up, people just don't have the same discretionary funding. So that will come down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Cool. Thanks.
Right. Councillor Anna?
In regards to the economic report, which I read this morning, that's cool. Just in terms of, I guess when I read it, I noticed the reflections on climate were largely in relation to the disruption that climate change causes. Is there a potential room for development around emissions associated with economic growth and development that could be brought into such a report?
We can have a look. What we really look for in this report is where we can get Hamilton-centric data, because we really want the story to be about Hamilton. There is a section at the front where we talk about sort of the national picture, and there is potential to pull it in places like that, and it's definitely something we can keep an eye out for and see what else we can bring in to really support that story.
Cool. And I was interested in the indicator also around the car registrations and home vehicle registrations. I think were also part of that report. Is it possible that there's a shift towards multimodal transport in business? Or no?
I mean, as a cyclist, I have seen a lot more people riding lately. I think that's probably more on the worker front than on the business front, which is what this data is more a reflection of. But yeah, we might be being a little optimistic. I think it's probably primarily economics.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Of July,
It is.
more
Yeah.
people will be on bicycle.
I think just before, just the comment around climate sustainability and how it features, I think, Councillor, I'm very interested in seeing what more through Tiki and Greg's team we can weave into our reports. It's certainly it's an important element of our work, and so we will definitely take that away and look at that.
Cool, thank you.
Right, I've got Councillor Maxine, followed by Councillor Bitter.
Thanks, Chair. Tiki, I'm absolutely in awe of the way you are so skilled at turning all of this complex information into really easily understood pictures and numbers, and it becomes really accessible to people. So cheers and a big tick to you for that. I'm also concerned about the consenting and the pipeline that we're going to experience into the future, and there's no shortage of the need for additional housing for our city residents. And I understand that the reluctance of those private developers and I guess the risk tolerance of their bankers. But I think also about Kāinga Ora and our relationship with them, and want to have a bit of an understanding about what their commitment to the city was, because it wasn't more than a year ago and they were talking about billions of dollars of investment into Hamilton. And where are we at with that?
I'm not sure I can answer the question about where we're at with Kāinga Ora levels of investment. We definitely, as in terms of a proportion of dwelling consents coming in, like Kāinga Ora, either through Consentium, so that's not stuff that comes through our consenting team, but it is picked up in our data, have definitely formed a bigger piece. It looks like that will continue to be so. In my personal opinion, this is an opportunity for Kāinga Ora to up their build program, because all of a sudden the demand in that private sector isn't there anymore, and so they should be able to get builders, plumbers, sparkies, all of those things. So that's an opportunity, but outside of my field of influence, I would say.
Yeah, thank you for that. Blair, is there anything that we can do as a council to engage Kāinga Ora further on that topic?
Paula may want to say something, then I can answer after Paula.
I know. First or second. Yes, Max, we've put together a really good forum of all the people in the affordable housing space, of which Kāinga Ora is one. And the last conversations that we had for that were very positive in terms of the uplift of investment for Kāinga Ora. Comes off the back, Maxine, about getting people out of not fit for purpose housing, which includes the emergency housing. They're doing much more in the transitional space with a number of developers now, but they also are looking at their existing landholders. Originally Blair, I think you might agree, they were originally focused on acquiring new development sites and having development across the city. Now they're looking at what they already hold, Max, like Enderley and other, and how they get the best and fastest yield. So my understanding, Blair, from that meeting was that we would expect to see quite an uplift in the next 2 years. Wasn't it, especially in that area, that they were going to go a lot faster and harder. In fact, the minister, at a political level, had given them instructions to do just that. I hope that helps in a little way.
Yeah, can I just put some additional comments to what Mayor Paula said, Councillor Maxine? So we work with KO very closely. I meet regularly with Mark Rawson, and my team meet with Mark as well. And so Kyongora are engaged with our business in a range of areas. Firstly, on the provision of housing and their intentions, and where across the city they're looking to build or develop or acquire land. And as you can imagine, it's right across our city. So there is central city locations they're working on. There is a range of their existing holdings that they're looking to repurpose, redevelop. But there are also some greenfield sites that Mayor Paula referred to where they are acquiring and partnering with developers. They are also a very significant submitter on our district plan processes, Plan Change 12, Plan Change 9. Again, some of that is driven by their national office in terms of looking at their investment intentions and potentially how some of those may, some of their submission points may be contrary to some of our plan positions. And I probably won't go into any more detail on that, but other than to say we're working through a process with them on that and how that impacts, enables or restricts development on some of their sites. We're also, through the Housing Forum and the Waikato Housing Initiative and our affordable housing lens, working with KO, MSD, Wise Group and others to partner on a range of solutions that will lift that housing game. So I think, Councillor Maxine, they are a very, very close and active partner. They also sit around the future-proof table, which is, I think, a fantastic addition to have Mark Rawson sitting there at CE level. There are challenges, and some of those are well known in terms of our infrastructure capacity that may affect part of some of the KO portfolio, but we are working proactively to help them navigate that and also encourage them to other areas of the city where there is less of a capacity challenge while council works through to address some of those capacity issues. So hopefully that sort of gives you a broad comfort.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Bidder.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Tiki, you don't need to answer this today, but there's some information I would like to get a better understanding of things, which is construction costs per square metre for housing in as many breakdowns as you can. So particularly interesting for affordability would be construction cost per bedroom. So any information like that per metre squared, per bedroom for the duplexes, for houses and for apartments will help us understand what we need to achieve affordable housing.
Yep, we can absolutely do that. We've got data from QV, and they break down by different house types. So you can have a standalone house of X square metres to X square metres. So we've got a lot of that data. So we can do that.
And also, this might be a little bit harder, but land cost per square metre, so we understand section size in relation to affordable housing.
Land cost is tricky, mainly because within the city, you could be 1,000 square metres or it could be a few hectares. There's a lot of difference, but again, the team can have a look at it. We have done it before. It's not of the greatest quality, but it is of good enough quality, I think, to be able to understand.
Even just taking a sample, it's like 10 smaller sections spread across the city, and just give us that sort of feedback would be useful.
Yeah, I'll take that back to the team.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, colleagues. I don't see any other questions. The motion, yes, sorry. Yep, you're all good to go, Tiki. Thank you. The motion is on page 106. I'll open it up for debate. Councillor Mark.
Chair, I just want to again acknowledge the great work that the team are doing in this space. It's it provides us with a very good view through the insights that are provided for us to help us see what's coming up. The caveat I would add, though, is that we are heading into some, some uneasy times, and we're going to see a lot of businesses out there really tighten their belt, and so not being hit with extra compliance costs will be the sorts of things that they'll be looking at to take off their, off their books. But again, great work, and thanks for bringing it to council in such a manner that makes it easy to understand.
Excellent. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Again, I want to take a moment to focus councillors' attention on the figures for the housing consents. With a reduction from consents lodged down 33%, that's a pretty big drop. That would be in the order of about 170 houses per month is what would have previously been the level. And the figure for May was 47. So that's a 70% fall in consents lodged, which has a huge impact on builders, tradies, in terms of workload, and will flow on to the housing availability, which will flow on to rental increases and house price increases. It's going to be tough for affordability, and this is a fairly big issue, and we've got to it'll be interesting to see how long it lasts and understand the reasons why.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Sarah, followed by Councillor Cash.
Thank you. Firstly, in terms of the issue of housing and consents dropping off, it is concerning to see supply of housing slowing down at a time when the actual need for housing has not gone away, but I guess the ability to pay for it, or the willingness to pay for it in the market, isn't there. So I do think, as Tikiet mentioned, that's the time where there's capacity in the market that we have the opportunity, say, for Kaingoora to build more state housing, but maybe there are other opportunities we can look at too, to ensure that we're using the capacity that there is with all the tradespeople, with builders, to actually build homes while the need is still there. The other thing I guess I just wanted to highlight, I found the summary of conversations with employers really valuable, and there are a few things that stood out to me because they are things that council should be doing, essentially. And one of them is providing decent public transport. I think it highlights that this is not just a climate change issue or a social equity issue. It is, public transport is important when it comes to those things, but it's also important in terms of enabling businesses to get their employees to work. It enables growth of business in the central city, because there's always going to be competitions for space, and this public transport is an incredibly efficient use of space when it comes to moving people around. I would love for us to work more closely with Regional Council around how we address the need for public transport at off-peak times, and I'm thinking times when you might have shift workers needing to get to work. They're an essential part of our economy, and they keep society working, and I think it's only fair that we look at solutions, even if we're not going to be filling buses at 4 a.m. in the morning. So, thanks.
Councillor Cash.
Thank you. Literally echoing much of what Sarah and Andrew have spoken about in terms of our housing restraints and restraints on our rental market, I think will be quite significant in coming months with our increase in immigration. There's lots of employment opportunities in Hamilton, so we're attracting the talent, but housing will be under a lot of pressure. And with the reduced number of consents and developers being quite wary, I think we're going to see the effect of that in different areas. I wanted to say thank you to yourself, Chair Ewan, and the team for arranging the visit to Union Square a couple of months ago. I found that really good personally. Just listening to these movers and shakers in their own right, and listening to the challenges and opportunities from their perspective was really helpful. Much to what Sarah said in terms of the feedback from employers, with public transport and things like that. Listening to these guys talk about safety and security, active transport, hospitality, they talked about all sorts of things. But listening to that firsthand from them was really valuable. So I'd welcome more visits like those and encourage others to attend, because it was really good. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kesha. It's great feedback. And I've been thinking recently we should do more of these tours, following on from an Economic Development Committee meeting, so that we get more people attending, because frequently we only get 4 or 5 people. And it dawned on me, if we could wrap up by 1 o'clock on a meeting day and then go do a 2-hour tour, we might get better participation. What's that?
Especially with sausage rolls.
Particularly with sausage rolls.
Or Amy's baking. Yeah.
We know what drives your attendance.
Yeah.
Right, any other questions? Any other debate? No, I have a couple of comments. Tiki, first of all, thank you for all the great work, and thank you for the report you've produced, the economic report. I had a pleasure of accompanying the Deputy Mayor to receive the new French ambassador and the head of her cultural and economic team from the embassy, and the official government representative from New Caledonia. And when we handed over the economic reports, I got an email later saying it was the most detailed analysis of a city's economic activity that they've encountered. So whether it's found its way to the Champs-Élysées Palace, I'm not sure, but I thought that was amazing feedback. In terms of housing affordability, I make an observation. One of the things that I think developers want more than anything is certainty. And currently, they're in an ocean of uncertainty. I'm very mindful that every developer is carefully watching what happens with a number of the plan changes that we're going through. And the reason that's important is that they could have significant effects on what they could do on their land. When you've got the likes of Plan Change 9 and Plan Change 12, major property owners are going, there's no point us trying to work out a plan, because we don't know if we can, if we're going to lose X, Y, and Z to SNAs. We don't know about the effects of HHAs. We don't know if we can do X, Y, and Z. And so we have to be mindful of that when we try to address why there's uncertainty. You want performance? Give certainty. You want people slowing down? Throw them a whole lot of options where they have no certainty. We control that. Okay. No other speakers? I'll put the motion, which is on page 106, seconded by Councillor Mark. All those in favour say aye. Those against?
Carried unanimously.
Right. Nicholas, strategic property update.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report deals with the Celebrating Age Centre, and at this stage there's nothing really further to report on other than that we are engaged in a feasibility study for that site to determine the best combination of community and commercial uses. That work is underway. Our expectation is that we get to the first sort of decision point as quickly as we can, and that decision point effectively will be, yes, this is going to work, or no, it's not. Once we get there, we can proceed down one of a number of paths. Either we carry on with our due diligence on a combined usage, or we separate out the two functions for that, and the community use goes down one path, potentially an LTP path, and a commercial development goes down another path. But our expectation is that we would have good enough information to look at that decision in early August, and comprehensive information coming back to the committee in September. But our next contact point with elected members would be a Municipal Endowment Fund Advisory Group meeting in August to review that project. Happy to take any questions.
Colleagues? Councillor Sarah.
Got scribbles all over my agenda, so I was finding the right scribble. Nicholas, this has been with a theme today with today's meeting, but I was just looking at the climate change impact statement. Obviously, we're not making decisions today, but when it comes to the building itself, that's something I guess we consider when we're looking at how we approach a build. So will we eventually do some kind of climate impact assessment when we get further along?
Yes. So I mean, I suppose the obvious one is, we have an existing building. Can it be repurposed in a way that will meet the objectives of the brief, or not? So I mean, obviously there's a structural assessment that needs to be done. There's some geotech work and all of those sorts of things as part of that piece of work. But I mean, I think it's fair to say we would want to retain what we can if we can.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I think my other questions wait till the PX. So.
All right. Perfect. So I'm happy to move item 10. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sarah. I'll open it up
Just
for...
a question from me, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Maxine.
That's
that came in late. I didn't see you.
It's for you. The question is for you, really. I'm not a member of the Municipal Endowment Fund, but I'm keenly interested in the outcome of that report, and would like to attend as just an observer, perhaps, that upcoming meeting. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. There is not one meeting in this building that an elected member shouldn't be able to attend. And I would never stop anybody. You're an elected member, you're very welcome. And we'll make sure that everybody's aware of that date.
Thank you. And, and any agendas that will be discussed at that time?
Absolutely. I note that Councillor or Chair Cash will be attending in her official capacity as a member with voting rights, keeping in mind that it all comes to this committee and then ultimately council for any ratification. But at the next meeting, celebrating age is definitely on the agenda, and we're mindful that Councillor Cash is joining the MEF for that meeting.
Thanks, Chair. That's terrific.
Pleasure. No other debate. In my debate, I was just going to actually cover those points that Councillor Cash will be attending the next meeting. The next MEF meeting is a meaty meeting because we've got a number of items that are percolating along. We're sort of like a duck currently. We look like we're just sailing along, but underneath Nicholas and his team, and there's not much of a team, it's mostly Nicholas, is doing a lot of this and trying to gather all of the strands to come to us with a proposal and draft of what we could possibly do. And it's not our role as governors to be doing a deep dive and trying to be part of putting forward that proposal. Our job is definitely to do a deep dive when staff bring a proposal, and that will go through the MEF, and then it would come to this committee, and then it would go to council. So there's lots of transparency along the way, and no one will miss out. And I encourage you, if you want to come along to MEF, you'd be more than welcome. Right, I'm happy to move item 10, seconded by Councillor Andrew. Any debate? Any further debate? No? All right, all those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. I'll now move us into PX, moved by Councillor Emma, seconded by Councillor Andrew. All those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it.